Hey guys, Jim here, welcoming once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at something that I don't typically bring out to this channel. A knife that I have seen a lot of people review. I've seen tons of photography on it, and nothing sold me. There was nothing by looking at it visually that said, oh, I have to have that. Now, I didn't have any doubts that it was a great knife and that the quality was fantastic and the lock mechanism was cool. It just didn't sing to me. And every now and then you'll come across something where it seems like it doesn't stir that emotional center that you have, that trigger that you've got when you go to buy something to add to your collection. No matter what you're collecting, whether it be knives or guns or motorcycles or stamps or coins or whatever, there's something that pulls at you and you go, I have to have that. I have to have that as part of my collection. Whether you plan on that being a user or a display piece or just a really cool collector's item, there's got to be something that pulls you in. And generally, just listening to somebody talk about something, no matter how much they fawn over it, if you don't find yourself personally attracted to it, you're probably not going to get it. And that's the way that I was with the Demko AD20. I saw it. Plenty of reviews, tons of them out there over the past 2 years, plenty of photography, and I just went, oh, it looks like a really great solid knife, just doesn't really trip my trigger. But the difference here is this is not a collector's knife. This is not a pretty knife. It's not rare or exotic. This is a work knife. This is like a Hinderer with an extra testicle. And I don't say that lightly. This thing is absolutely friggin' crazy. And I feel, again, like I'm late to the party on something, and a lot of people have been singing its praises now for a couple of years, but it was only when I got it in my hand that I realized, we've got a lot of really great knife makers out there, right? But we only have a handful of true innovators. When we're talking about people like Michael Walker and his amazing locks, Grant and Gavin Hawk for both their locks and their deployment innovations. I mean, take a look at the Deadlock Model C. It's incredible. Bob Terzola, Gus Sacchini. There are, only a handful of really innovative makers out there. And I think very truly we have to add Andrew Demko to that list for his locks, specifically in this case with the Shark lock. You got the Triad lock, the Scorpion lock, now the Shark lock. There has been a quest for the longest time for the creation of a folding knife that is as close to as solid as a fixed blade as you could feasibly make it, and then still hopefully make an attractive knife around that system. And, well, Andrew has certainly done that. And that's what I've got here in the AD20. There is something about this knife, and I know I'm probably driving you insane by flipping it open and closed, but there's something so satisfying about that mechanism. When I first got this in my hand, and full disclosure, this is not my knife. I did not get it from Demko. Andrew and John Demko have no idea in the world who I am. I doubt they've ever heard my name. I was talking one day with Metal Complex, and we were talking about that crazy, enormous alpha beast that I've got from PMP Knives. That's a 1 of 1 for right now. And he's like, dude, he goes, I would love to review that on my channel. It looks so crazy and so cool. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to send it out to you. He goes, I'd love to send you something to play with too. He goes, I just don't know if I have anything that you haven't already reviewed. He goes, I do have an AD20. I said, you know what's funny about that knife? I said, I've been very, very curious about it, but not curious enough to spend my own money to buy one. Just because I didn't feel that it filled any void that I had in my collection. Sends it out to me. I open the box up. I'm not really expecting to be blown away, obviously. And I played with this thing for the first 5 minutes and went, shit, I've got to own one of these. I am now on the desperate hunt to get an AD20. So, by the way, if you know of anybody letting go of a toxic green or an orange or a blue, send me a message. But personal feelings on that aside, there is something so wild about this knife. As I mentioned before, it's not pretty. It's not exceptionally rare. They just do small drops and they sell out quickly, but they are consistently made. At $425, which is the price on the machine ground version of the AD20, I don't see how you can go wrong. I mean, it's not a small amount of money for somebody that really only buys production knives, but if you're like me and you like to collect higher end knives, you like customs and mid-techs and things like that, $425 isn't a lot to spend. And you don't always know what to expect for the money you're spending when you're buying online, which is why I try to do as many of these videos as I can so you can get a feel for what you're purchasing online and hopefully know before you hit the buy button if you're actually going to like it. A lot of what sells me on this knife is holding it in my hand. Once I put this in my hand and I felt it, I felt the way that it was designed, the thickness of the G10, the solidity that this thing exudes just by holding it in your hand and then clicking that lock. And it has one of the most unique sounds as well. It reminds me a lot of the Stan Wilson non-flipper flipper. For those of you that watched that video, I hope it came across, but there's like this triple click sound when you flip it. And if you're using the shark lock, instead of flicking it open, which you can certainly do, but if you use that shark lock by releasing the lock mechanism and swinging the blade open, it gives you that familiar triple click here. It sounds like you're holding a $3,000 hand-built custom 1911 and you're cycling that smooth, glass smooth slide back and forth. That unique mechanical sound that comes from that all-steel gun. That's the sound you get out of the shark lock. And I found that to be perfectly honest, quite mesmerizing. Not to say that it's a fidget toy of some sort, but it does encourage you to just sit there and play with it. Even though it's not a flipper, you can deploy this thing every bit as quickly as a flipper. The lock is, from the experience that I've got with this, as solid as a lock can possibly be. I don't see how you could ever get this lock to fail. Now, there have been videos and discussions with the Demkos and everything showing how this lock actually operates. I don't own this knife. It belongs to Metal Complex, so I'm not going to take it apart and show you the lock mechanism. It's so well advertised out there, it would be almost impossible for you to do a quick search and not trip over 3 or 4 posts or videos that show you the inner workings of that lock. I'm here to tell you that no matter how you view things, there will come a product every now and then that will surprise you enough to change your mind. Because I always kind of thought of it when I saw it, I'm like, well, I mean, is it really that different than having a Hinderer XM24? You've got a very similar finish, you've got a similar style of blade, even though it is thicker blade stock than most of the Hinderers. Or is it that different from owning any number of other knives? And I gotta say yes. Now, I am not a hard user. I'm not out there beating the living shit out of my knives. So I don't necessarily need a workhorse knife. But after playing with this, I'm compelled to own one. I don't need an overbuilt knife, even though I've had many in my collection. I don't feel that this falls into the same vein as overbuilt knives like, let's say, a Medford or a DSK Tactical or something in that range, a Skike knife or a Direware. It doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel that it's massively oversized, and I don't want to say that there's a finesse to it because there isn't. There is nothing aesthetically or in any other way about this knife that's going to give you that feeling. It's not a pretentious knife at all. It is a solid working knife that actually happens to have one of the coolest and most fun mechanisms in which to lock it. So what I want to do with you right now is I want to take you down to the tabletop, show you some close-ups on the knife, show you how it operates, show you as best as I can through this video medium why I fell in love with this, down to and it's crazy, the undercut jimping that's on the lock. This is not your standard jimping. This is all done with wire EDM, which can run in such tight tolerances that the jimping is so fine that your finger, it almost feels like it's tacky. Your thumb drops onto it and it's so sticky and it won't move, yet it's not tearing up your skin in order to do that. The way that this thing operates, when you get that about 2/3 of the way closed, the spring takes over and sucks the blade back in. So it doesn't feel like anything else that you currently own in your collection if you don't already have a Demko knife. There's something about that, just pulling it back in, that you're like, holy shit, there's power behind that lock. You can feel how powerful that spring is. And I think that all of it, all together, there's a tactility to this. There is, when you hold it, when you touch it, when you feel it, when you're playing with it, you then understand and can very easily justify why people love it and why people have no problem spending the money on it. So again, $425 in the MG, the machine ground. Then if you get one of the hollow ground versions, I think I've heard it somewhere around double that price, maybe. There's a full titanium version that's about double the price. And as cool as I think the all titanium would be, there is something about the G10. It's still a hefty knife, and we're going to weigh it, and we're going to see what that's all about. But I can't help but think that the all titanium would be ridiculously heavy. So without any further ado, let's go down there, take a good close-up look at this, and let me show you what makes this knife so exciting for me, what completely changed my mind about it, and why at this point now I am desperate to find one for myself to have in my own collection. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It helps the algorithm when you subscribe and you click the notifications and you click like and you add little comments to the video. It helps YouTube understand people enjoy this person's content. We're going to show it to more people. And right now, my stuff is not getting shown to the people that it used to be. Even my subscribers have to sometimes go to my channel directly and see that I've uploaded something new. Also, if you're not already a Patreon subscriber, please consider doing that. Your $5, $10, or $20 a month really helps this channel grow, and it helps me get in cool stuff like this that I wouldn't have to borrow from somebody in order to showcase on the channel. Without any further ado, let's get down there and take some close-up looks at the Andrew Demko AD20 MG. All right, so I've got to bottle up my excitement a little bit here and just try to get the important, relevant information out to you before I start just fawning like crazy over this knife. Let's get this bad boy open, talk about the specs, talk about the size, do some size comparisons, all that kind of good stuff that we normally do in the beginning. Then we're going to get to it. So first off, Demko AD20, these are $425. Overall length is 8.625 inches with a blade length of 3.7 inches. And when you take out the sharpening choil, it's just a hair over a 3.5 inch cutting edge. There are two blade choices, blade steel choices typically in the MG, the machine ground, and that's either in 20 CV, which is what this is, or it's going to be in 3V. Handle length is 5 inches. It's made of some super thick, awesome G10 that makes it grippy but very, very comfortable. And as far as the weight goes, let's just go ahead and measure it, or weigh it, I should say, not measure it. It's 6 ounces dead on. Just a comparison, other knives in this same size category that I'll give you some size comparisons to. 6.8 for my DSK Tactical Diamondback V2. My Dan Caraher 904 is 5 ounces. And how much for 4 ounces there? So all relatively the same size knives. And you can see what a big difference it is. That's a big old chonker, even though everything else here is a titanium frame lock, and that's only G10. So that gives you an idea of just how heavy that blade and that lock is when it's all put together. So let's get these out of the way. Get a size comparison done here as well. Of course, a banana for scale. And as you see, oh my God, it's bigger than a banana. All right. So DSK Tactical Diamondback V2 prototype. Put them butt to butt as all things should be. And you see it is a little bit larger in overall length. The DSK has kind of a shorty blade on it. But the thicknesses, as you see, the DSK is a thicker, more substantial knife than the Demko. Yet the Demko is just it's gonna feel stronger, even though this is, full custom, all titanium frame lock. Certainly no complaints whatsoever about the strength, but there's just something about feeling that lock engaging and disengaging that you're like, damn, there is a real difference. Up against the Dan Caraher 904. Serious difference in the blade stock thickness. Also in the overall thickness. And then, wow, let's just look at the blade stock, all the difference on these two. My goodness gracious. How insane is that? And I'm perfectly happy with this on a daily basis. And I don't think that I would shy away from using it for pretty much anything. But this really gives you that idea of what a quote-unquote work knife is going to feel like. So, before I get too deep into this, I want to give a massive, massive, massive thank you to my good friend Metal Complex, who allowed me to borrow this knife out of his collection. We kind of swapped knives for a couple of weeks. He's borrowing a big beastie from me, and I borrowed a big beastie from him that he offered up. And I got to tell you, like I mentioned in the intro, it wasn't the kind of knife that I was particularly drawn to. I knew they were good knives. I thought it was a handsome enough knife, just not my, particular style. I tend to go for something maybe a little bit wilder or crazier finishes or something like that. And, I don't work in construction or anything like that where I need a quote-unquote work knife. I mean, I'm a knife maker, and the stuff that I'm going to be cutting out in my shop, I have shop knives for that, were screw-ups or something. It just wasn't quite cosmetically right, wasn't good enough to send out to a customer. So, they end up being used to cut down cardboard boxes and open up belt orders and Damascus orders and shit like that. So for me, I don't really have a particular need for a work knife. So, a lot of times something like this is going to be the perfect ticket for me. It's compact enough to carry. It's not going to be overly heavy for me to carry. And, it's got a little bit of flash, a little bit of finesse to it. Even the less flashier knives that I'm into, are still going to have a certain degree of refinement or high-end feel to them. So I just kind of went, this isn't really something that I particularly need, but I am curious about them because they do look very interesting. One of the things that I really dig is the pivot there. It looks like the shell casing. I just think that is damn cool. And I'm a big, big fan of doing your brand markings on your pivot instead of having a bunch of damn billboards all over the blades. I absolutely love that. And there on the back is where they are made. Does it say Wampum? Can't quite see that. It looks like it says Wampum, Pennsylvania. Or am I reading it upside down? Or I don't know. I'm not from there, so I'm not sure. I apologize if I offend anybody from Wampum or Vampum or whatever it happens to be. It's really hard to get the right action here under the camera without swinging the blade into the camera. But one of the things that I really like about the Shark Lock is the fact that you just simply unlock the lock. It starts to kick the blade out for you. And then simple little wrist action without banging into my tripod allows you to flip it open. Of course, you can flick it open with the thumb stud. You can manually open it with the thumb opening or the thumb stud. You can do all that stuff. Yeah, you could do the reverse Spidey flick and stuff, but that's just so cringy and awkward. And you have to overcome that very strong spring. If you screw up and it only makes it to there and your finger ends up in the way, it's going to come right back. And that is a very, very strong spring that's in that shark lock. So do keep that in mind. You have to get it right to there. If you get it anywhere less than that, it's going to come down like a guillotine. And I love that action. I feel that it makes it so different from everything else out on the market. That was the first thing that I noticed when I picked it up to play with it. And then I really paid attention to the ergonomics. Now, I'm a large to extra large in all of my motorcycle riding gloves, and my hand fits in there perfectly. Doesn't feel cramped. Feels really, really, really good. You can rest your thumb on the shark lock like a thumb ramp if you want to. It's going to be great for anytime you have to push and pierce, because as I had mentioned before, or I think I did, is they're using wire EDM to do this jimping. So it's actually undercut jimping. It's stuff that you wouldn't be able to do with a hand file, stuff that you probably wouldn't be able to do with a CNC, maybe not. I don't believe that there's a way to do that. You have to have that precision from the wire EDM. And then you have the standard manual jimping up here, which feels good. It's nice and sharp without being overly sharp. Same thing goes for the opening slot. They have gently softened all of what should be sharp edges and completely got rid of them. And I'll give you a good comparison here against my DSK. You can see that it still has sort of sharp edges there, and the Demko does not. And this, you could buy 4 of these for the price of this. So I think the attention to detail is certainly fantastic. The feel in the hand, the action, which is unique unto itself, the locking mechanism, and you just can't get around the fact that no matter how hard people try, no matter how often we tell them, listen, if you're doing really crazy, serious, hard cutting tasks, or you need to be batoning wood or some shit like that, use a damn fixed blade. That's what they're for. You shouldn't be using a folder for any of that shit. However, if you are in that situation, I don't know what happened. Your car broke down. You took a shortcut through the woods. It started raining. You sought shelter. Next thing you know, it's the middle of the night. And you're stuck out in the middle of the woods overnight, and you tripped on a twig and twisted your ankle so you can't walk into town. I don't know what your situation is, but the point is, if you were in a situation where you needed to use a knife, seriously hard use a knife, and all you had was a folder, I'd want it to be this one. Because I just don't see how a normal human being could make that lock fail. I love the feeling of it as it disengages, because you're not just pulling back on it, it's going back and up, and then it lets that blade just drop. Back and up. And you're not having to consciously pull it up, by the way. I'm over-exaggerating the action so that I can do it slowly so you can see it working. All you're doing is that. You're just going to simply pull it back, and that's it. But what it's doing when you're pulling back is it's not just pulling back, it's pulling back and going up. And that's what's disengaging from the blade. So to me, this is a knife full of pluses. I like the feel. I like the heft. Love the lock. I love the beefy, strong construction. Look at the massive size of the pivots. Well, I don't know why I said pivot. Of the standoffs that are back here. I would normally knock the pocket clip, because I think at this price range for a knife that obviously had this much thought put into it, The clip is one of those spoon type afterthought kind of clips. But I'll be honest with you, again, it's not something like this. It's not something like this. It's not something like this. It's not meant to do that. This is a friggin' work knife. And the pocket clip works exceptionally well. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's not meant to look pretty. It's meant to grip in your fucking pants. And that's exactly what it does. You've got a lanyard opening through the frame and through the clip. If you choose to run a lanyard, you can certainly do that. You cannot reverse this clip, but for, I believe it's about $10, Demko does offer an upgrade where you can purchase a left-hand side clip, and all you do is you take out this hardware and use them on the reverse side with that clip, and you're all done. Because the screws that are here are a little bit longer than the screws that are here, so you're just going to be reversing them. Taking down the knife, as far as I've seen, is not a difficult task at all. You do have a few components there, and you got to know what you're doing, but it's not particularly difficult. But like I said, this is not my knife. This belongs to Metal Complex. I'm not going to be taking his knife apart. Oh God! I got to tell you, I've become completely ass addicted to this knife. I've been carrying the shit out of it, and I don't really want to carry anything else on some days. Now, if you're looking at this wondering, what the hell, it looks a little different than other ones that I've seen. Let's break it down briefly. So you have the AD20, which is this, okay? And this is the AD20 MG, which means machine ground. Or you can get the regular AD20, which is a custom, that is hand hollow ground. These are machine flat ground. Still, even though it's pretty thick behind the edge, it has a ridiculously sharp edge. I mean, crazy ass sharp. The only time the thickness is really going to bother you is if you're making very long cuts through thick material like cardboard, and it's going to start building up and it needs to start separating. That's really the only issue. But it is slicey as shit, way slicier than you expect it to be. And your options, again, are 20 CV or 3V at $425. Customs are around $850 and up. Then there's the AD20S, which is a little smaller, and it's slimmer, and it's lighter weight. And they're using D2 for the steel, and Grivery, which is a type of polymer, for the handles instead of G10. And they are, but there is, what I'm seeing, right around the same price, which I'm not entirely certain why. Again, I was researching that on a retailer's website, and they may have the 20S's marked up higher for whatever their own reasons are. I don't know. Because unfortunately, if you go to Demko's actual website, there's almost no information. There's a little bit of a write-up about the lock. It's not really well written either, so it doesn't really give you a lot of the info that you want. And there's almost no information, like it doesn't tell you the thickness of the blade, doesn't tell you hardly, it just says 20 CV or 3V against G10. That's it. That's all they tell you. So there's not a lot of info there. Maybe when they have them in stock and you go to the shop portion, they may have more detailed information there at that time, but they didn't have it in stock, and they rarely ever do. And the third version is the AD20.5. So you have the AD20, AD20 MG, AD20S, and now the AD20.5. 20.5 is only $150, but it's smaller. It's way slimmer. It's only got a 3.2 or 3.17 inch blade, so it's smaller. It's much thinner in the blade stock, much thinner in the G10, much, much, much lighter in weight. And for me, I want the robustness of the full size. I want to feel that bad boy in the hand. I want to have that grip. I want to have everything that this has. I also don't really like on the 20.5, they have just a basic pivot, just a basic torque screw. And then they do the model marking. They have like this little tab that's smooth in the middle of the handle, and then it says AD20.5. I don't like that visually. I don't like how that looks. So this is the one that I feel that I have to have. I'm going to be banging my head against the wall trying to get one of these, and it's just one of those things. You got to be at the right place at the right time and be ready to pull that trigger super, super fast, or you're going to miss out. So, are there any minuses for me? Are there any cons? Yeah, there are. I'm really bothered by one particular thing. And I'm sure that you have looked at this knife and thought the exact same thing. Here's somebody that took a lot of time to design this whole locking mechanism, which it goes in about this far and from here to here. It's a very large locking mechanism in here. And then he's designed an entire knife around it and done a really good job. Why? Something could have been done in some fashion to eliminate that very unsightly gap. There's no reason that couldn't have been designed around. Now I realize why there's a cutout there in the back of the blade, or in the tang of the blade, because that is where it's engaging into the blade stop, which is part of the lock mechanism. I get that. I totally understand that. And the frame has it covered there. There is no reason whatsoever that you've already got a handle that's significantly larger than the blade, because the pivot is all the way down here. So you already have visually an imbalanced knife, which I don't care about. I don't care that the blade looks so much smaller than the handle. It doesn't bother me, not in the least. So there would have been a way you could have made the handle even just a little bit longer so that you could have filled in this gap and not reduce the radius on that finger choil. I don't know, that really, man, that bothers me way more than it should. Is it enough to stop me from ever buying one? No, not at all. I will own one of these for certain. But that, as somebody who's designed a lot of stuff in his lifetime, I look at stuff like that and go, why? It doesn't make sense. It now looks like this blade is this disembodied thing from the handle, and that it's just laying in there. There's something, my eye will always go to it, and that's just the way it is. But it doesn't change the functionality or anything else. It's just one of those minor nitpicks that, because everything else about the knife is so awesome, that you really get bothered by a small thing like that. Honestly, that's really about it. I like everything about this. I know there's an upgraded version they're very, very rare, where instead of being a G10 frame, it's all titanium with the same diamond texture. Metal Complex owns one of those too. Then you're spending $1,000. Wouldn't bother me at all. Totally worth it. But I gotta wonder how cumbersome it would be, how much heavier that really would be. But when I look at this overall, I get a different sense of it now that it's in my hands. I see a certain rugged beauty to it that I didn't see before I held it. So this is one that just by handling it, by fondling it, by playing with it, that you immediately fall in love. And I think that this might be, and I don't want to overblow this, this might be one of the most important knife designs on the market right now. And not just the shark lock design. I mean the overall design of the knife. Like I said earlier, you could draw a very easy comparison to Hinderer here, but it feels tougher. It feels more substantial. Yet it's not as ridiculous and overdone, overbuilt, however you'd like to word it, as, say, a Medford is. This feels a lot more practical. It certainly cuts. Oh my God, does this thing cut? It's a decent enough, manageable weight. And yeah, that lock is pretty fucking awesome. I don't truly believe that I could ever test this as a regular, normal human being. I don't believe that I could ever test this to the edges of its capabilities. I'm quite certain that they put these things through a lot of rugged tests to see where the failure is and how much it takes to make it fail. I doubt anything that I could do in my everyday life, or even really trying to overdo it, that I would push it that far. So for me, I have 100% confidence that this knife will do absolutely everything I ever want it to do. I don't believe I'm ever going to feel a limitation if that's the only knife in my pocket, and I find myself stranded somewhere and I've got to just use the shit out of my knife. I truly, honestly believe this is the end-all, be-all when it comes to a wonderful balance of unique design, affordable price. It is a premium price, yes. But in this world that we're talking about, that's a very affordable price. If you're only buying, $60 Kershaws, yes, this is expensive. I get that. That's not what I'm talking about. When you're living in this world, this is very, very affordable. This is the least expensive knife on this table by a very, very, very far stretch. And it's fantastic. I don't feel I'm missing anything at all if I'm carrying it. So you've got great design, a fantastic lock, great ergonomics, good looking design. Handsome and rugged is where I'll put that. It's not beautiful, it's handsome and rugged. Okay? Handsome and rugged are its preferred pronouns. They're actually adjectives, but you know what I'm saying. I think this is one of those knives, when we talk about knives that have to be in everybody's collection at some point in their life as a knife collector or as a knife user, there's always going to be Chris Reeves Sebenza. There's always going to be Hinderer XM18 or XM24 if they don't like smaller knives. There's always going to be a Strider. Maybe it's a SNG or SMF. And I'm not saying because all of these knives are just the best in the world. I'm just saying these are the ones that we commonly tell people. If you want a great quality knife that's going to last and feel like you're getting bang for your buck, they're staples in people's collections. And I think this absolutely needs to be included in the same conversation now. But I think you're going to have to hold one. If you're looking at the video and you're looking at pictures and going, I don't see it. I don't see what he's really going on about. Trust me, I'm right there with you because I didn't see it either until I put it in my hands. And now that I have, now that I've played with it, now that I've carried it, now that I've cut with it, now that I have gotten a good, familiar relationship with it, I absolutely must have one of these in my collection, and I won't be happy until I do. And I'm going to be right there with you guys, struggling, trying to find them. Because when the drops sell out, they sell out, and then you just got to wait for the next one. And that's just the way it is. I'm not complaining. That's the way it is. And I've already narrowed down my preferences. The Knife Joy did an exclusive that was a lime green G10. That's my number one preference, followed by blue and then orange. And one day I will also have the titanium version. I'll find a way to get the all titanium, but that one's not my priority. I want one that I'm going to carry all the time, which is going to be in the G10. God, I love this thing. I just want to play with it all friggin' day. I'm going to annoy everybody I come in contact with. All right, I'm going to stop it right here because at this point, I'm just telling you things that you already know. I absolutely love it. If you're looking for something rugged and tough, but you also want a showpiece, this is probably not going to be it. You know, buy yourself a Hinderer and then buy a fancy scale for it and buy a fancy clip for it, and then you can kind of customize it your own way. But if you're looking for an absolute true workhorse that feels phenomenal in the hand, cuts with incredible edges, and carries very well, feels great in the hand, and has quite a bit of fidget factor to it, then get yourself an AD20 with the shark lock, and I promise you there's no way in the world that you could ever be disappointed in that decision. And if you are, there are thousands of guys chomping at the bit like me to buy one. So if you buy one, you find, yeah, you know what, it's nice, but it ain't me, and you go to sell it, it's going to sell immediately because everybody wants one. All right, I'm going to end it here with that. Thank you guys for joining me as always. I'm going to come back with some more knives very, very shortly, including a trio of Russian affordable knives from Cultratech. Yeah, I know, I just said Cultratech and affordable in the same breath, and I was not stricken by lightning, struck down by lightning. I wasn't any of those things, because somehow it's actually true. And I'll see you guys on the next video.